But you got Talk shoes.
Recorded live.
Black Power, BB48, my old chop. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Welcome to our Sunday special. We're going to have in tonight the Attorney at War, the official, the only Attorney at War, Attorney Alton Maddox. I'm getting my chat room open so I can cipher through everything. If you're a guest right now, could you please put your microphone on mute? I'm striving to get my board open. We don't want to hear people's things that they got going on in the background. All right. This thing didn't open up. Please open this thing up. Having a little trouble with my internet connection. All right. Here we go. Having a little trouble getting my internet connection open. But waiting for Baba Alton Maddox to come in. Baba Maddox, are you out there? And thing we're going to theme around today. Our theme going to be somebody got the computer. Just call in. Put your computer on and your line open. You got to push mute. But matter of fact, you ain't going to have to push mute. As soon as I get my chat room open, I'm going to mute all the lines, and I'll have all this correct. So, pardon yourself, family. Let me just get this thing through. My computer's not working, so I got to go to my backup. Right. All right, here we go. We'll get this thing correct. All right. Let me see. Before I do that, though, let me make sure Baba Maddox. Make sure that I got Baba Maddox in here. Baba Maddox. Black Power. Is this Baba Maddox line? Black Power, BB48. Is this Baba Maddox line right here? Hello?
Yes. Hello? Yes, sir.
All right, hold on one moment, Bob. I was just making sure that I had your line. All right, well, all right, family. Well, you know, we got the Attorney at War, Baba Alton Maddox in tonight. We were looking, you know, we had a conversation with him, a short, brief one last weekend, discussing a few things that were going on in the community. That, before we really get into that, and some of the questions around the Million Mark March, we just wanted to give Baba some time just to speak to the family and give us, you know, his outlook and an outline for the grassroots people. You know what I'm saying? Just a little outline and something for the people to go forward. I was just termed off of the thought that our brother Minkara had asked the brother last weekend. And we will get into that homework too, Baba, about the black woman still being a slave.
You got it.
So, but from that point, if you could, you know, come in. I know it was a little difficulty doing for going to Atlanta, and so we want to also make sure that everybody on the line, we figure out a way that we can show our appreciation for the work that you put in. Where, you know, we're a lot of the people more electronically sound. We in the 2015, and a lot of the youth, and I'm saying youth 40 and under respect the work that you've done, because it's their only way for them to connect with some of the ancestors that have already passed on to that ancestral realm, some of the elders who passed on to the ancestral realm, a lot of the master teachers. So we want to figure out a way to show that appreciation, and the least that they can do is show monetary appreciation. So we want to find a way that we can somehow get some electronically wise, some type of PayPal or GoFundMe or something going on. We just want to I wanted to put that out there personally, so then we have a way that people could contribute to you every month, or just whenever they can, people could just always put in whatever donation that they could.
Well, I thank you very much for that. Certainly, I think that in any struggle, you certainly have to have a war chest. But in my struggle, I chose a long time ago to do what I could to protect our youth, because our youth have become, unfortunately, and I don't necessarily like to use this term, but most people may understand it, an endangered species. And in that respect, we have to do all that we can to protect our youth. And in order for me to do what I had to do, I chose to invest my retirement into the current struggle, which meant that I more or less was concerned about what was going on with our young people today, and I realized that it would be inappropriate for me to be operating and charging people fees commensurate with my skills, because our children in the meantime would be wiped out. So that's basically where I am coming from, and I feel as though anything that people can do, that they should, because the investment in our future is our most important product.
Sure. Definitely. Baba, tonight, if you could, for about the next, I guess 30 minutes or so, if you could, if you got 30 minutes, to just lay out a message to the grassroots, and then we'll get to a little bit of the million mark march and things of that nature. But before we do that, though, I want to make sure I get my my co-host in here. Let me see if my co-host in here. Sister Camille, is that you? I'm gonna have to go through, and I know my sister on the line, but because of the program that we're using right here, it shows New York numbers. It doesn't show me exact numbers, so I can't just pick her out of the crowd. So what I'm gonna do, sister, is during the time that Baba is speaking, I'll just hit you on the back room, and we'll figure out how we can make that connection. Because I definitely want my co-host, the sister, to be on the line. So after you give the message to the grassroots, we'll go through again, connect with our sister, and then we'll deal with the million march and things that surround that.
Well, I think one, we must suggest and recognize some very basic principles. In this system, in this country, natural law is the basis for American jurisprudence. And basically, natural law is a struggle between the predators and the prey. And in that regard, we are, by all accounts, the prey. And so we have to deal with how do we defend ourselves against the predators. The predators, on the other hand, are the ones who decide what rules we operate under. And, of course, those rules are always going to be favorable to the predators. And in that regard, it is not surprising that black people do not have a right to bear arms, and they do not have a right to defend themselves, which are very critical for our survival. And in addition to that, the second matter that we must recognize that we should not be able or should not be able to finance our own oppression or to endorse our oppression. Since 1964 and 65, this country has created a financing system which encourages black people to finance their own oppression and to endorse their own oppression, and which therefore gives the predator more funds to operate in terms of acquiring the rest of his agenda. And in that regard, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964 have been employed, and we have exploited both. We saw a decrease in black businesses because of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and we've seen legislative oppression because of the Voting Rights of 1965. And those are some very basic things that we have to refrain from financing and endorsing our own oppression. If we're going to be oppressed, the oppressor should use his own money and should use his own political clout to do that. He should not, on the other hand, encourage us to use our own money to finance our own oppression and to endorse our own political mishaps. And that is a very basic principle. I mean, you have to recognize that when you have money to spend, that you have to spend it very wisely, and that when you have an opportunity to vote, you have to vote very wisely. And usually, both of them require considerable amount of study. So, you're not just going to go out with $100 in your pocket and just start spending it without study. And you're not going to go to a polling booth and vote without having studied the issues and the candidates very carefully. And hopefully in that regard you have a mechanism in which people are there to assist you correctly in how you spend both your money and your votes.
I'll say, well, those are some quick pointers for the family out there. I know you sent this. I've read an article that you sent out earlier. I'm going to pull the article up because I want to make sure it's correct. With the title and heading of it. Here we go. This ain't right. Well, it was about the Million Man March, and I keep referring to it as the Million March. So if anybody offended by that, just you're gonna be offended because I'm not gonna change that. Because to me, it was a mark, meaning that you were being targeted as some type of victim. Normally in certain type of cons, the person who is the con is being done on is called the mark. And so I label it the Million March. I look at it as a great game. But you wrote an article concerning Benjamin Crump, and I heard the statement, attorney at war, and I said, like, I tuned in. I'm media, so I had to tune in to see exactly what was going on, not wanting to, you know how sometimes you don't really like to say, I told you so. You know, so I was looking at it, not wanting to be able to say, I told you so. And so I'm watching and I hear attorney at war, our attorney at war, Benjamin. And I see here you say you got plenty of phone calls from people who couldn't believe what was happening. And, you know, I wanted you, if you could, just go into just your thoughts on that whole situation.
Well, I'll be very glad to. And I want to start out by dealing with this based on some principles of logic. So people recognize this had nothing to do with being emotional. It's just a matter of principles of logic. And you see, you can't be a principled person unless you use principles. That's the only way you can be principled. So if you have no knowledge of the principles, you have no opportunity to be principled. Now, when you deal with logic, it starts with definitions. So you have to make sure first your definitions are correct. And this is why we have such an appreciation for Malcolm X, because if you go back and study the autobiography of Malcolm X, you know that during the time that he was being contained, he spent a considerable amount of time in the study of words, and as well as the history of words, which is a basis for critical thinking. You have to master that first. And secondly, you have to engage in classifications. So in terms of where we are with Benjamin Crump and what happened in D.C. This past weekend, you have to recognize that what is going on in this country today is 4 classes of movements. And they are, 1, the human rights movement, which is hardly on the radar screen. Then you have the civil rights movement, CIVILRIGHTS movement. And thirdly, you have the SILVERRIGHTES, civil rights, SILVERRIGHTES. And then now you have the Black Lives Matter movement, which is in the fray today. Now, you will notice that in reality, on this past Saturday, only 2 of those movements were recognized. One was the SILVERRIGHTES movement, and the second one was the Black Lives Matter movement. Mm-hmm. Now, the definition of the SILVERRIGHTES movement is what the name suggests, silver. 30 pounds of silver, and used by lawyers to get hush money for their victims. And so this is basically a personal injury movement where we're not talking about a class of people who are victims. We're only talking about persons who are seeking personal success, financial success for themselves. And then you're talking about the Black Lives Movement, when if you saw what was going on C-SPAN today, this past weekend, it was suggested to you that the Black Lives Matter movement is a government-funded movement or a foundation-funded movement. And so when I heard that Benjamin Crump was being referred to as the attorney at war, it was of concern to me because I've always said that Benjamin Crump is a part of the SILVRRITES movement. And so it is inconsistent for an attorney to be a part of the SILVRRITES movement and also be an attorney at war. That can't happen. So just on that alone, forget about the fact that generally people consider me as the only attorney at war. That being the case, it was difficult for me to reconcile the moderator referring to Benjamin Crump as the civil as the attorney at war when I knew he was part of the SILVRRITES movement, which is presided over by Al Sharpton. And so it goes around the country from place to place, trying to pacify and placate victims and giving them some hush money in the meantime, and in each particular case, not filing a civil class action and not seeking any liability on the part of the police or whatever agency is engaged in causing harm to have any liability. And so this has been going on for some time, and this is what Benjamin Crump is a part of. And so, on the other hand, I have been a part of the human rights movement, and which is something totally different. It's hard for me to understand how Mr. Afrakan could get confused by the RITES movement. And so under those circumstances, that caused me great concern, and it seems as though that while Mr. Farrakhan called this the 2015 Million Man March, it seems to be more in league with the SILVRRITES movement.
I don't know what happened, but I can't hear the brother talking.
Hello? Hello, Black Power.
Did you mute him, Brother Bourne? I can't hear him.
Barbara Maddox, you on the line?
Brother Bourne?
Yeah, you here.
Okay.
No, I didn't mute him. I don't know what happened, but he's back. All right. We got him here.
Were you able to hear what I was saying?
No, I believe your mic muted out for a moment. You were speaking and then it just muted out.
Okay. All right. Well, what I was basically saying was that it was very difficult for me to understand how Mr. Farrakhan, who most people refer to as being a part of the human rights movement, having as his guest speakers on this past weekend prominent members of the SILVRRITES movement. Not only did you have Benjamin Crump, which is a part of that civil movement, but you also had Tamika Mallory, which is a part of that movement. And the real victims, like Tawana Brawley, who Mr. Farrakhan promised on December 12, 1987, that he would always be with Tawana and her family, seems to be missing in action at this 2015 Million Man March, as they were also missing in action in 1995.
With Brother Mikaran, is there anything that you wanted to ask to the brother? And before I do that, if you could give me a moment, I just want to pull Sister Camilla in. I want to make sure I got the sister in here, and so I'm gonna have to start at the bottom here.
No doubt.
All right. Let's open up a couple lines. But go ahead.
Yeah, I basically wanted to ask him, was this basically a fundraiser type of situation that took place this weekend, Baba Maddox?
Well, I think it was somewhat beyond just funds, because I think that a lot of money came in without the need for the grassroots to provide Mr. Afrakan with the money that he may have collected this weekend. I think that the issue this weekend really affects policy questions and how we are going to be disposed of in the future. And so there are people out here who are not waiting for some of us grassroots types to finance our own oppression. They're so eager to move in that I think a lot of money came from foundation and from the government itself. And I think that what you're going to see as a result of this, some of the things that we have been trying to fight for so long, because the things that people can use in terms of words like justice or else, is very misleading, because of the fact that if you wanted justice or else, you wouldn't have a Benjamin Crump there, because he never believed in justice for else. He just only believed in hush money. So you wouldn't have him as a keynote speaker, and you certainly would not be referring to him as the attorney at war. You would not have Tamika Mallory, who was a sidekick of Reverend Al Sharpton, as one of the primary guest speakers on that particular night. And we basically know where Reverend Sharpton is coming from at this particular time. And it was surprising that you will be holding a march where you call it justice or else for somebody who's collecting millions of dollars from the various corporations in America as head of the Madison Avenue Initiative, with the National Action Network only being a front.
Okay. I got one more question, too. Bob Maddox, I was born in 1982, so I'm a youngster to this movement. But after doing my research and finding out the extensive relationship that you have with Khalid Muhammad, did you take offense to them centering or using Khalid as a promotion tool to gear up this march?
Well, I was very close to Dr. Khalid in so many ways. And, one of the things I think that people may not be aware of is some of the things that happened in a civil case called Pagonis versus Maddox, Mason, Sharpton, and Brawley. Even though Tawana Brawley was listed in the caption, she was never a party to the lawsuit. She had never been served with any papers to be sued, and no court in New York had any jurisdiction over her. So the idea that Tawana Brawley may have lied or whatever was just a farce, because nobody looked at the facts. She was not a party. But this is what bothers me. I have in name been associated with Mr. Farrakhan for years, and I've been associated with Reverend Sharpton and C. Vernon Mason for years. And at the end of the day, they're all missing in action. So the pledges that they made back in 1987 are now null and void. And so, and when you deal with Khalid, the reason why I'm very much serious comrade or colleague is because the white man used legalese to destroy Khalid, and our people did not know what legalese meant. I mean, and so, this is why I spend so much time now, writing virtually every day of trying to get our people to understand legalese and to understand military science, because the white man is bilingual. He only speaks 2 languages, and they are legalese and military science. And so, I'm more concerned about my ability to educate our people than I am to just try to sustain myself. So when people give money for any cause that I'm involved in, I try to remind them, first of all, black people can never repay me because the things that I did, I never charged for them, and they have now become too costly. But what I suggest is that we have to have an institution where we can speak truth to power, and also an institution that will educate and explain to our people what certain things are existing to bring about. And so when Jesse Jackson submitted a New York Times article blasting Dr. Khalid, and then the U.S. Congress passed what was called a Bill of Attainder. And a Bill of Attainder is unconstitutional in America, but most of our people don't seem to understand what a Bill of Attainder is. It is a death warrant. And so when Congress passed that death warrant, it was inevitable that Khalid was going to die. And nobody seemed to have gotten really around him to provide him with protection. I didn't see the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, not Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan getting behind him or anybody else. And so, what is disturbing to me is not just exploiting him for the Million Man March, but what is more disturbing is the fact that when Congress passed a death warrant against Dr. Khalid, nobody took it seriously, and nobody put the Fruit of Islam or anybody else around Dr. Khalid to make sure that he would survive. And as a result, he was shot in Riverside, California. He recovered from that, and then he came back to Georgia and was poisoned, and that was the end of the story. And so, and somebody got the answer for why were we so lax in bringing about any kind of investigation as to how he died, and why would Jesse Jackson urge Congress to file a Bill of Attainder against him?
I did not know that. I didn't know Jesse Jackson fought. That shows his position. Wow.
Brother, you had anything else you wanted to add at this moment before I believe I got Sister Camille in here. Sister Camille, is that you?
I got a long list of questions, but go ahead and bring the sister on so she can get her question. I don't want to,
No.
Black Power, BB488.
And BB488. Well, Sister, come on then, Baba Maddox. This is our
yes, sir.
host, Sister Camille. I know she had a couple questions. She's seen a couple things. We all looking at this 10, 15. It was very funny, but she might have I don't know what her question might be on.
Black Power and my love and respect to Baba Maddox.
Black Power to you, sister. Thank you.
Baba Maddox, it's so funny that you went into the Bill of Attainder because I looked that up today. And I was stunned. Well, you have mentioned this many times. I've heard you mention this before. Let me put it that way. And to read the Constitution, to really go into it and look this up, and also the definition in the law library, law dictionary, right? It was shocking to see that first it's unconstitutional. that there was no outcry. I'm not expecting that from the enemies that are lawyers, but those that are black and are lawyers, the black people in the Congress at the time. It's stunning that this went down like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it does also, as you mentioned, it is used in a sentence of death.
Absolutely.
So those black elected officials who knew this language and knew that meaning, those black attorneys at the time, outside yourself, the only person standing up who knew this, shame on them. I just cannot believe that it went down like that. And the involvement of those surrounding Dr. Khalid Muhammad, because, Baba Maddox, I'm offended that the new Black Panther Party is claiming how they put out a report. Well, you should have, because he was with y'all when he was poisoned, when he was murdered.
Uh-huh.
To me, that only implies implication.
Uh-huh.
Now, Baba Maddox, another thing that happened at this rally, Afrakan spoke about Thomas Jefferson being a lover of freedom, being a lover of our people being free. At the same time that he is imprisoning and have our people in chattel enslavement and raping a child. Can you speak on your take on Thomas Jefferson, since Louis Farrakhan, in my opinion, did a disservice to our ancestors and to our people that was there and those that heard that in his description of Thomas Jefferson?
Well, Thomas Jefferson was one of the rank slave masters and slave holders, of all times. He was absolutely a certified rapist, and he engaged in doublespeak while he talked about the Declaration of Independence. He, at the same time, was raping a black woman who he did not consider to be a human, and that was Sally Hemings. And there was an uproar because there was a newspaper publisher from Richmond, Virginia, who actually said that called Sally Hemings a darky, and said that she was in the White House with Thomas Jefferson, and Thomas Jefferson in turn filed charges against this publisher and accused him of seditious libel, which was a very serious charge. And basically what it meant was that you had absolutely no right to speak the truth against a slaveholder. And so this publisher went to prison. As a result of it, she was called Dusky Sally, and so Jefferson was offended because this Calendar, who was the newspaper publisher, was trying to inform the country that Jefferson was more than a slaveholder. He was actually having sex with a black woman in the White House. And so obviously that caused a tremendous uproar at that particular time. And then later, as we know, the other uproar was the one with our friend and educator Booker T. Washington, who dined at the White House at the invitation of Theodore Roosevelt. And as a result of that dining at the White House, it was their name changed to Executive Mansion. From Executive Mansion to the White House, which basically meant that no black person has any reason or any business being in the White House. And so now you have a scenario which I think is very important, and I want people to understand this. Unfortunately, political forecasting is not our forte. That's unfortunate because if political forecasting was our forte, then we would be able to plan now for the racial onslaught that's getting ready to occur against our people. And for Minister Farrakhan to be elevating Thomas Jefferson is really an insult to all black people, and really it minimized what we are getting ready to face because the Republican Party has decided that a Democrat will be the next president, and the Republican will control both the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House of Representatives. But in doing so, someone like Joe Biden, who probably will be the next president, will carry out his policy of mass incarceration and mass destruction. Biden was the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee when Clarence Thomas came before it, and Biden was the one that elevated Clarence Thomas to the U.S. Supreme Court. And in addition to that, Biden afterwards wrote the legislation and gave it to Bill Clinton, allowing for the mass incarceration of blacks. And so, we're in a situation now where just for Mr. Farrakhan to be on the National Mall elevating any slaveholder is a real dangerous signal, and it calls for a relaxation of our people at a time when we should be very much alarmed what is coming down the pike.
Black power to you, Baba Maddox, for that beautiful breakdown. And while you were speaking, I'm hearing a repeat of the Hayes Compromise of 1877. And if you look at time-wise, we're just 2 years from 2017.
Absolutely. And which breaks into time-wise, a political cycle. And so this new political cycle is such, and I want everybody to understand this. We have to understand that this country requires a political duopoly. That means that there have to be two political parties in order for this country to be viable. So you have to have a Democratic Party and you have to have a Republican Party. Neither one of those parties can go out in the same way that you have the Sherman Act and the Clayton Act in economics to prevent a economic monopoly. Because a monopoly does not work well in a capitalist society, and a monopoly in politics does not work well either. So, given the fact that you have to have a political duopoly in politics, the key word then becomes balance of power. Now, if Mr. Farrakhan was talking intelligently, or had been talking intelligently on Saturday, he would have brought out that concept because it was in that concept of which Thomas Jefferson understands very well and was part of contributing to the writing of the fact that we are 3/5 of a person because not that people are simply saying that that we are this or that. We are 3/5 of a person in order to allow for a balance of power. You see, slaveholders were outnumbered by the racists in the North. So the racists in the North would have outright dominated the politics and destroyed any idea of a political duopoly if there had not been a 3/5 clause in the U.S. Constitution. Given the fact that a U.S. 3/5 clause was inserted in the U.S. Constitution, we allow for a balance of power. So that basically meant now you have a political duopoly. If you're taking us out of the equation, then the whole political system would have gone down because it can only operate on a duopoly basis. It's the same thing with economics. You can't have General Motors just being the only a car manufacturer, you have to have competition. You have to have a Ford. I mean, in order for you to have a viable economic system in this country. So you have to have a Democratic Party. You have to have a Republican Party. In order for both of them to exist, we had to become 3/5 of a person. And so now we're in a situation where the president is calling for refugees. The Latinos are calling for immigrants. And so in order to maintain that balance of power, we have to be destroyed. We have to be eliminated. It's hard for black people to see this because we don't understand what the system is. We just out here running around with no idea that these people have structured something that they intend to maintain in order to bring in the Latinos, because the reason why the Latinos are important now because of the Monroe Doctrine. And that basically meant that the United States had to control the Western Hemisphere. Given the fact that now you have all these Latinos coming in here and them over-dominating or providing more than necessary firepower for the Democratic Party, which would disrupt the balance of power, somebody are man out. It's like the musical chairs. You know, when you play the game of musical chairs, when the music stops, the person that's standing is out. And so this is what we're getting ready to face in the United States. And because we don't have any political forecasting at all, and because we have leaders like Afrakan and leaders like Al Sharpton who are misleading us, we are on our absolute political demise.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for that. Sister Camille, did you have any other question?
Well, I'm blown away by Baba. You know.
Are you breaking up a little bit, sister?
I said I'm blown away by Baba Maddox's last statement on the future forecast, the immediate future forecast of our people. You know, and troubled because how do you get those people that went there to become aware of the forecast he eloquently broke down for us just now? And also, Baba Maddox, before my last question here, and I have to ask this because this is something else that I was highly offended by, and you would have a superior grasp of this history and this time period as well. I was offended when the minister brought out the grandchildren of the women that Malcolm X was that he accused Malcolm X of lying about. In relationship to Elijah Muhammad's relationship with these young secretaries. His death was called for. And being of that, you know, maybe not of that time, being younger, but aware of that, what is your opinion on that display that occurred yesterday?
Well, you know, one of the things that I say, because, you know, I deal in concepts. And so, you know, when I reason, I find legal concepts and political concepts and economic concepts to describe human behavior. And many times our people are not advanced enough, and unfortunately, sometimes they're way over their heads. So when you use certain language, it's very difficult for them to grasp and appreciate what you're saying. And so they just simply become highly offended. But I've done a lot of study from the time that I was in high school. And I went on into college and studied at the Library of Congress, in addition to being at Howard University. And I have continued this study up to this very point. And so what I have found out in all of this, and in my attendance at the University of Georgia Law School when I was there and studied master slave law as it was taught back then, to us, which is very important, of course, for me to understand where we are. There is such a thing called a slave burial. And unfortunately, we are all too much guilty of participating in slave burials. And a lot of our people are offended when they hear the word slave burial because out of their own ignorance, they don't have any idea what the slave codes provided for and what they see as being implemented pursuant to the slave codes. Well, one of the things that the so-called slaveholders required is that there not only be a physical death, but there also had to be a burial of one's legacy. And so many times now, we ourselves participate in burying one's legacy. And so, you know, when you have someone as great as Malcolm X, his message was so outstanding that it has to be buried. And all of his legacies have to be buried. And this is what you see now, you know, in the same way as I said some time ago, the Gil Noble had a slave burial because not only was his body put in the ground, but like it is was also put in the ground as well. So we don't have that anymore, and we are weakened as a result of it. We don't understand that Meet the Press and Face the Nation are examples of public affairs. And on the other hand, black people are engaged in arts and entertainment. And so when we see here and now today, it's arts and entertainment, which weakens our political consciousness and the ability to fight, ward things off in the same way that white folks are going to make sure that when they watch Meet the Press or Face the Nation, they're going to be observing serious political issues, and they're going to have people from think tanks and elsewhere around the country as well as journalists to come in and analyze these issues. And so we don't have that, and so that's the reason why we are engaged in a system of sharecropping, political sharecropping, you know, while white people are going on with their political duties and functions. And so it's hard for our people to understand that we have to upgrade ourselves, we have to upgrade our mentality, and we have to upgrade our consciousness in order to fight this enemy.
Yes, sir. Sister Camille? And I should have went first because Sister Camille asked two questions that I wanted to ask already. But Sister Camille, do you got anything else you wanted to ask of the brother? I just wanted to I wanted to ask him two things, and then I'm gonna open up for Brother Haywood, and we're gonna go to the lines and just get some questions in, and you know, and see what the people want to ask about, and see what other words that are out here of inspiration, because we had a whole lot of frustration on 10, 11, 15. No agenda was given. 2 hours. It was over 2 hours of speech before the question of what is the justice or else. You know, so that right there, I was blown back by it. But you know, there was one statement that was made though that he spoke on friends and how friends don't betray each other. And this was at 4 minutes. This was 15 minutes. Nope, this was 11 minutes after he spoke on Malcolm. Right? He spoke on he made it in a brief reference because it was referencing the sisters and the mannerism that they take care of their bodies and not to go out and have abortions lest you kill the next Malcolm. And I was highly offended by that statement, knowing that he wasn't the trigger man, but by his own words, he placed culpability on some of the things that he said for the death of our brothers. And Baba Maddox, with me saying that, what do you think about something like that, where we have a man named Afrakan who, how do you look at what happened with Khalid and what happened with Malcolm? How do you juxtapose those two different situations, looking at, because you've been around long enough to look and see the maneuverment of Farrakhan in those two different situations, and him saying friends don't betray each other?
Well, one of the things that happened in 1995 was obviously Dr. Khalid had been kicked to the curb in 1995, and Steve Coakley and myself was two persons who chose to stand with Dr. Khalid rather than to be over there with Mr. Farrakhan. And the thing that I saw is just simply a lot of jealousy and envy, because the reality of it is that if you examine Dr. Khalid Muhammad and what he was saying, he was only a cub of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I mean, in the most strictest sense of the word. And, obviously, the question became one of opportunism, where, was it more financially attractive for us to abandon the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad or not? And so I think that the answer was that obviously people around Mr. Farrakhan, believe that the wisest thing to do economically was to get rid of Khalid or to back away from him, because this was not the true religion, so to speak, that would bring about the kind of SILVER that people needed. And I mean, there's no question about it. When you look at the speakers that Mr. Farrakhan had up there Saturday, it was all about SILVER. It was not about CIVIL, and so as I pointed out earlier, when you are in a SILVERRITES movement, it's all about money. And that's all that you could see from the people that he had with him on Saturday were people who were promoting dollars and not promoting the rights of people.
Papa, thank you very much for that assessment right there, brother. Anybody got anything they want to add on from there? Matter of fact, though, give me 1 second. I want to open up our brother Rahe Rule line. I know my other co-host, and then we're going to hit to the rest of the lines. Let me get this thing. All right here. All right, brother Rahe Rule, your line. Brother Rahe Rule, your line. I know you had a question that you wanted to ask Baba Maddox, so come on there, family.
Yeah, baby for Holy A family, Black Power. How you doing today, Baba Maddox?
Black Power to you, my brother. Thank you for the concern.
My question really isn't within the context dealing with fair trash or anything dealing with the NOI, the F.O.G, dealing with, yesterday's attraction of 1 million traders of the black race. My questions are more so geared at the black man versus the legal system. And due to the fact that we find ourselves being prisoners of war in a Eurocentric trap of law, what is the best defense, or what tools or resources should the black man be using? Because to me, from what I've seen throughout the past of history and current events dealing now, is that a black man inside of a white man's courtroom, it's a no-win situation. And I don't see any doors opening up, or anyone or any large mass groups of our people stepping, into
the knowledge of law to be able to even take a stance inside of a Eurocentric house of law. So could you give us any information or resources that we can stand on solid and firmly as a black man stepping inside of the cracker's courtroom?
Well, I think first and foremost, we have to accept the fact, if we want to deal with truth, we have to accept the fact that the white man and his philosophy of white supremacy are fixtures, and they constitute a permanent war against descendants of enslaved Africans. It is absolutely impossible and illogical for any of us to believe that under any circumstances that the white man is going to give us a break. And the reason for that is that we have a symbiotic relationship with these white folks, and that in order for them to go around the world to prove their superiority, charity has to start at home. And so that means that we have to be the guinea pigs for the world to see the power of the white man. Now, given that fact, the thing that we should immediately understand, that since he is at war with us, is that we have to develop our own army, because you can't fight white supremacy without an army, and white supremacy is based on legalese and military science. And so you have to have an army in order to fight white supremacy. And so the first thing you have to do as a person is to recognize that if you see your name on an indictment, the indictment should read to you the predator against the prey. That's what it should read to you. And in reading that to you, it should tell you that this is a class action. You know, it's like in the jungle. I mean, if you see a lion out there, a lion is going to take down a zebra for tonight's supper, but tomorrow he's going to be hungry again. You know, and so he's going to come after somebody else and come after somebody else and come after somebody else. And this is what white supremacy does. It's going to recycle, and it's going to always be there. And so we have to understand that. So what am I saying? What I'm saying is simply this. If your name is on an indictment, not only should you be in court, but at least 1,000 members of your family and friends and neighbors and co-workers should also be in court with you. You know, we have to go back and deal with what our ancestors did when they had the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 and the Fugitive Slave Act of 1791. And what would happen in the North, if you escaped from the South and you got to New York or Boston or some other location, and at some point after that, some bounty hunter located you and took you to the courthouse, our ancestors would come together as an army and go to the courthouse and release you. That's part of history we're not being taught. And so, you know, and those kinds of history lessons have to be duplicated and reduplicated today. I mean, one of my favorite black attorneys in the 1840s was Robert Morris Sr., who I suggest probably was the first human rights lawyer, certainly the first civil rights lawyer in America. And we have never even heard of him, Robert Morris Sr. He was the second attorney to be admitted to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Bar, and when he had the case of an enslaved African from Norfolk who got to Boston, and he was a few steps ahead of the bounty hunters. When they seized him, they took him down to the the Boston Federal Court. And so in this particular case, Robert Morris Sr. Went down to the courthouse and signed out on as this enslaved African attorney. And so he filed a notice of appearance, and he got in there, and next thing they knew, he helped Shadrach break out of the prison in Boston, and Shadrach was on his way to Canada. And so this is the kind of struggle that our people engage in. But as we lost sight of our history, then we don't really believe these things are possible anymore. And at that particular time, our people knew they were possible. Now we don't believe they are possible. And so we have a historical problem. But it's not going to go away. That's what we have to understand. I mean, I don't care if we stay in the next 500 years. As long as the white man is in power, he's going to be doing the same thing. So you have to always be geared up for war, and that's why, when I was a child, people would say there's going to be wars and rumors of wars. And I was saying, what in the world is that? And, then I began to understand what that meant. There is always going to be wars and rumors of wars. And every day you wake up alive, you should be ready to go to war. And, I mean, that's the reason why they call me the attorney at war, because every time I went into a courthouse, I was in there to do battle. I didn't go in there with some briefcase and saying a bunch of nonsense. I knew there was going to be a war, and I knew I had to defend my client one way or the other. I mean, sometimes I had to get into combat. We had to fight our way out of these courthouses, which is something that Benjamin Crump has never known and would never do on behalf of a black person to defend another person. I mean, I've gone to jail. I've been prosecuted and those kind of things. That's what happens when you're at war. I mean, what Benjamin Crump is about is a farce. And that's the reason why Mr. Farrakhan knew or should have known that there was nowhere in the world that Benjamin Crump should have even been invited. Because the idea of inviting Benjamin Crump when you claim it's justice for else is a farce. Because this man has blown every case he ever had. He never won a case. Let's get beyond rhetoric. Let's talk about results. I mean, at some point, you got to have the intelligence to say, wait a minute, what has been the result of this person? And this is what, unfortunately, black people, we sit there and listen to people talk, and we never ask, well, what's the result? What's the won-loss record? They playing the playoffs in baseball today, but they are playing them in baseball today based on won-loss records. Any intelligent people can always try to find out what have you won and what have you lost. The only thing I heard at the Million Man March yesterday was some attorney who said he was associated with Mr. Farrakhan saying he had lost cases. I never heard nobody who spoke there yesterday who said they had won one single case. And that don't seem to bother our people. And that's what's troubling when you can have somebody who's lost every case they ever had and you are celebrating them as though they're Jack Johnson or somebody.
And I think what you're saying, that Baba Maddox, is pretty much my mental, what grew on my mind for me to ask that question, because dealing now in 2015, you don't see the black man in the courtroom being the victor. We just see us coming out being the loser. And this is, for me, I may be wrong, and if I'm wrong, correct me. This is why so many, of our young brothers and sisters being kidnapped and being a victim and becoming a prisoner of war in this Eurocentric, white supremacist legal system. So, we have the morons coming with the Black Law Dictionary saying that as long as we know this book from ins and outs, that it will give us some type of gravitational pull and a strong resource for us to be able to fight this cracker inside of this courtroom. So my question to you is, how effective would you say that are people to know the Black Law Dictionary from cover to end? Do you see that as being an effective tool for us in fighting this cracker in this courtroom, or is it just better for us to just say pretty much fuck the cracker and his laws and build our own law system and govern our own people and not even worry about the cracker system?
Well, to me that was pretty easy to answer, because, I looked at this legal system and I said one or two things are going to happen. I can either overturn this system or I can beat them at their own game. And so, given those two options, I chose to beat them at their own game, only because I didn't see any support, out here that I could entice to join me to overthrow the system. I mean, let's be real. I mean, the worst thing you can do in the world is to go out here and depend upon our people to be ethical in a situation like that. So with me, I was literally one of those persons who just beat them at their own game. That was just simple as that. I mean, I don't care what kind of case you gave me. I would look at the rules, understand the rules, and would apply them better than they could apply them for themselves. Because you see, what I knew is that a jurisprudence did not come out of Europe. It came out of ancient Egypt. And there was no way in the world that I was going to let somebody who came out of a cave to be better at this game than my ancestors were, who wrote the rules of the game in the first place. And so I've said all along that the problem that I find in this legal system is that we need a different education. We don't need equal education. We need a different education. We need somebody who can tell us how you can beat this system, and and then go from there. I mean, the reason why the reason why I'm barred from the courtroom today is because everybody say, look, if you let this man back in, he gonna beat the system. I mean, so I don't know. I can't speak for nobody else, but that's what they're saying about me. So you got 25 years later, and even though I was only given a bogus suspicion of 5 years, it's been 25 years, and they said, well, we don't change the rules of the game now because your people are asleep, because the black politicians have sold it out. We feel like we can just bar you from the courtroom forever. And so that's where we are. But the reality of it is that this system can be beat, and and I'm not saying that other people can beat it. Maybe they can't. But I'm saying that I know that I could beat it, and I know that I don't care what kind of case you gave me. You put 12 members of the Ku Klux Klan in a jury box, and they're going to come back with a not guilty verdict. That's just the bottom line. Now, that may sound crazy, but that's real, and they have acknowledged that. So, I can't say whether, other people can learn the law and be like I was, but I can only say that I know what I was, and I know what I knew, and I knew how to develop myself to obtain the results that I did. That's all that I can say. But I can understand people say, well, the system's still right. Of course it's still right. I just happen to be able to know how to beat it constantly. It's just like going up to Las Vegas, and every night you walk into the casino, you leave with a bag full of money, And, hey, sometimes it happens, and when it does, they decide, well, you just can't come into Las Vegas no more, So the system's still corrupt, but the only thing I can say is that as long as I was practicing in the system, I was constantly able to beat it.
Last question is for brothers and sisters that's out there that are in the street. When we get caught up in this white man's legal system, it takes a lot of money, for our brothers and sisters to even stand a chance of even taking a fight in the courtroom with this cracker. And there's something else that you said, but I don't want to get off that question. So I'm going to finish that question out first before I move on to the next thing. Can you give me any resources for our brothers and sisters that's in the street that we could use as tools to apply to this fight against this cracker in this courtroom? Because really, truly, the only way that I see it being effective in any way is that we would have to have 1,000 more brothers and sisters with the knowledge and the will to fight this cracker in this courtroom just like you. And it's very unfortunate that we don't have that at all. We don't even have the steps of the process to even begin to even train the babies in that matter. So it's like, what do we do?
Well, the legal system is based on the law of supply and demand in much the same way as the economic system is based on the law of supply and demand. And this is the very, very easy point. If if the police officers tomorrow arrest 10,000 of us, then that's a tremendous supply. And the problem is, if we all said that we want a trial, then the system is bankrupt. I mean, just that simple. You know, they can't do it. I mean, so they can't deal with the numbers that they are creating, and and we're only accommodating them by not resisting, and that's the point, because they have agreed, and their greed is much more expensive than what they have to deal with that greed. And so if we are not willing to go along with what they are doing, then it's going to be a matter of large supply and demand. If everybody demanded a trial, nobody would get a trial. Nobody will get a trial because the system can't handle those kinds of trials. They just can't do it. And so, and the only way that we can accommodate the system is by pleading guilty, which is something I never did. So, there were three things when a client came to my office. I said, look, I'm not going to ask you what happened. I'm not going to ask you to take the witness stand, and I'm not going to ask you to plead guilty. And so, I mean, if other lawyers are operating in the same spirit, then this system can't do the damage that it's doing. The only reason why it's doing the damage it's doing because 95 out of 100 defendants are pleading guilty. So it makes it very easy for the system to threaten you with 25 years to life in prison, or you can cop a guilty plea and get 10 years. You see, or if you just have the ability to say, well, I'm just ready to go down. I'm just ready to have a trial, and then I'll see where it gets me. And I'm suggesting to you that the numbers are not there for them to put in the number of people that they're putting behind bars, and that we can only accommodate them by pleading guilty.
Thank you, Brother Maddox. I don't want to take up so much time. I know it's other family members and callers on the line that also got questions for you. So I look forward to being able to sit with you and be able to get, some of the issues going on in my mind resolved, and for us to be able to build and find a solution for our brothers and sisters in this war against this beast on both sides, from a military aspect and a legal aspect. But in my mind, the last thing that I want to say is that I don't think that the black man against the cracker in the courtroom using legal lease will hold as a sword in the hand to be able to slay the cracker, because I just don't see us, even if we educate ourselves on legal lease, of us being able to use that as a tool to come out successful. The only real successful way that I see us getting any justice against the cracker, whether on the battlefield or in his courtroom, is by eliminating them.
Well, that certainly is the final solution. I mean, no question about that. In the meantime, I think that there are obviously things that we have to do to prepare one way or the other. And the thing that I suggest is that we have to take control of the minds of our children at a very early age.
I share to that, Baba.
Sure. Well, we're gonna go to the lines, Baba. We're gonna let some of the callers in, and I got two. But before I let the callers in, I got two names real quick that I want to say their names, and I just want you to just give your thoughts on these two people who were also spokespersons at the Million March March. And the first one is Reverend Jeremiah Wright.
Well, let's go to the second one, and then we'll wiggle our way back to Jeremiah Wright.
Well, the second one is Benjamin Chapin.
Well, that's sort of easier question for me, only because I don't really know Reverend Jeremiah Wright, so I hate to have to deal with people on their reputation, But in my opinion, as it gets to be Ben Chavis, what I see happening in this country is that some people are given credentials that they didn't necessarily earn. And they are given these credentials to make it easier for them to infiltrate organizations later under the guise that they have the right credentials to do it. Now, I have looked at the Wilmington 10 and all of the cases around what Ben Chavis has been involved in, and I still have a lot of questions, as to whether some of those things were legitimate or not. I have been involved in other cases where I know that people were operating with false credentials. And so, many of these cases in which it makes it easy for those persons to infiltrate black organizations. And the point I'm making is that I will put a question mark under Ben Chavis' name.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I just wanted to ask about them too. You already spoke on Benjamin Crump, and as you said, you can't really give us too much on Jeremiah Wright, and you already touched Afrakan. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go to the line, and I'm going to let some of the callers on the lines ask a couple questions. We got a few more minutes with the brother. We'll be on for about 8:00. So family, come on in. We got a lot of callers on the line, so y'all please come in with a question or a comment, and we'll be coming to you. And so for the people who are on the line, those who have been on the line the longest, know that I'll be coming to you first. So be prepared for your question or comment. I'm going to come and go quick. It's not going to be a lot of time. All right. Let's open up North Carolina. B48, your line is open. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment for Bob Alton Maddox. All right, North Carolina. We're going down to our next call.
That's why that shit fucking light ran it down.
New York got a lot of stuff going on in the background. Black Power, your line is open. New York, your line is open. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment for Bob Alton Maddox. All right. Like I said, we're going through quick. We got a lot of callers out here. All right, we're on Black Power, Washington, D.C. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment for Bob Alton Maddox. All right. Let me see right here. I know our brother up here got a question. It's our brother Dondre. Let's see. Black Power, brother. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. We got a question or comment for Bob Alton Maddox. All right. Our brother might come in, might have a question. I see y'all out there. I know y'all. I know I'm not gonna go through all these callers and y'all got nothing to say. Don't be afraid now. Black Power, welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment for Bob Alton Maddox. New York City, New York. The line is open. That's you, New York. All right. We got another New York caller, New York City. Your line is open. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment? I told you, y'all lines, they coming open. Y'all be prepared. When you hear that sound, say unmuted. That's you. All right, New York City. We're going to hit New York City one more time. We got another New York City. Your line is open. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment?
Hello? Hello?
Yep, that's you.
Good. Alton.
Yes, sir.
Best on the planet. Now, and I'm like,
I'm going to channel Champ.
Give your
All
name,
right,
brother. Give your name.
I'm going to Champa. Yeah. Like the whole planet, the spark was lit when we heard him refer to Trump as attorney at war. You know, it is such a blessing to hear you talk and other brothers who are doing it, even with the difficulties, but I'm going to get to some questions, all right? So I saw the ones who were there, and I also saw who the cameras chose to focus on. One was Cornel West, one was Russell Simmons, one was Snoop Dogg. Now, Afrakan had talked about the lawyers who took the 35%. Wasn't that directed under Trump and the civil rights thing?
Okay, say that again. I heard part of that.
Right, you heard Farrakhan when he started talking about the lawyers who was getting on the 35%, who was doing exactly everything that you said. Wasn't that really referring also to Trump? And as you say, it by the civil rights, the ones with the S and the R. When you see the way they are doing it, it really makes us appreciate you so much more. And especially the way you are able to answer and to take in all kind of questions. Now, I'm going to bring you a little bit back here home, okay?
Okay.
In terms of Calvin Butts.
All right.
In terms of Calvin Butts, now, it seems like the whole it's a go gangster. It's a go gangster. And we see, like in terms of New York, because this is where I am at, on the thing with de Blasio, whether he was going to run under beef, on the seeing of him taking under 3 and the millions. In terms of the millions which have been allocated to parents, to all of the ones, to the thing of Sharpton. Sharpton's show on today, which is, whoa.
Brother, excuse me, brother.
Yeah.
Brother, if you could, can you streamline your question so it can be a direct question for Bob Alton Maddox? We got a lot of callers on the line, and, you know, we got limited time, but I definitely want you to get your question in, but can you streamline it so it'll be something that Bob Alton Maddox can answer?
All right. Okay, Brother Alton. We're going to have you to come up to the Bronx. We're going to have you to stand in the circle of the Mott Haven where I'm from. Where is it when I can bring you to some of the young people so we can do some of the things you were saying? Oh, I should give you my phone number. Can you wait?
Well,
Alton, write down my number.
Okay.
Ready? 718-993-1258.
Okay.
Illinois, with us on the 3rd. They call me Shanta. All right, my brother?
Gotcha. I will call you later.
Amen. All right. Okay, we
All
good.
right.
Okay, go to the next person.
All right, Pappy.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, sir. Black Power, Pappy.
Oh, peace and blessing power, my brother.
Peace and blessing.
All right.
All right. That's our brother in New York City. Brother got that energy out there. All right, we back down to another New York caller. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment for Bob Alton Maddox. And Bob, I believe the brother was asking the question about the comments that Farrakhan made, which he's famous for flip-flopping or double speak. He's one who is good with double speak, you know, and projection. Double speak and projection are two of his, major things that he utilizes in his oratorical, with his oratory. And the brother was asking about the 33%, where Farrakhan made a reference to lawyers who were coming behind victims' families, and the only reason they were around was to make the 33%. And the brother was asking, did you think that was a direct shot at Benjamin Crump and the civil rights type of lawyers?
Well, it absolutely is a direct shot. You know, what happened, a case called Bates versus Arizona was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court. And in Bates, the U.S. Supreme Court opened the door for lawyers to engage in advertising. And so when they did that, it basically opened up the door for lawyers to do what had been prohibited for poverty lawyers. When I first started practicing law in New York, I was a poverty lawyer. Now, the problem with that was that as a poverty lawyer, I could not engage in class actions. And so basically, it limited my effectiveness in the legal system. And so I pretty much just got out of it, because I felt like a lot of things that we do must be based on class actions. Now, what Crump has done is that he has certainly signed those retainers of 33% with clients, but he has refused to initiate class actions. So basically, he's right where we were with poverty lawyers, where the only people that get any money is the lawyers themselves, because when you look at most of the so-called victims, they pretty much take hush money. So, while they may be parading around at Farrakhan's event or somebody else's event, but they do nothing to change the system, okay? Because they're not initiating class actions, and while they might be able to initiate a class action, they don't need to, because it's easy for them to just get a third of what they can get from one client and let it go from there. So that's what Crump is doing. He does take a percentage, and Farrakhan was certainly referring to him. And as you correctly say, Farrakhan was engaging in doublespeak, because while he was on one hand questioning Crump, on the other hand he would elevate him by giving him his stage. So that more or less allows Crump, with the notion that he is the attorney at war, to get more clients. And so you have to begin to ask yourself, is Farrakhan and Crump engaging in some kickback? In the same way that Sharpton is engaged in kickbacks. I mean, that's part of the money that Sharpton makes, is that he promotes himself as a civil rights leader, and victims see him on television with the mayor or somebody, and they run to him thinking that he is a civil rights leader. He goes and get Rubenstein, who is a rapist, to do his bidding. And so at the end of the day, Sharpton is collecting kickbacks. And so you have to ask yourself, is Mr. Farrakhan doing the same thing? Or is he above that? And so this is where the problem is today, is that when so many these persons engage in this kickback. You see, I have never, ever asked any client to sign a retainer agreement. Okay? I have never taken a dime of hush money, ever, in my life. And I have always insisted that if I had a case, it was going to go to trial. And so as a result of that, somebody like Farrakhan or Sharpton doesn't have any use for me, because first of all, I'm not collecting money from the client myself. So I certainly don't need to give them any kickback, because there are no kickbacks to give. And this is what we have to begin to worry about now in terms of the legal system, is how you have these so-called civil rights leaders hooking up with these civil rights attorneys to make these gigantic hauls against our community. And there's a lot of money in these kickback cases. I mean, you can become a millionaire overnight in these kinds of cases. And some of these lawyers, like the lawyer, the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, that's what he was. He was he was a civil SILVRRITS attorney, and he was the one that called us out our names and defamed us. And at the same time, we're using black clients to make the money that he is making. So this is a whole new scam that is going on, and that's why I said that it's very important for our people to first classify the four types of movements. You have the human rights movement, you have the CIVILRIGHTS movement, you have the SILVERRITES movement, and you have the Black Lives Matter movement. That's very important. You got to understand each one of these movements and understand what they really stand for, and most of us do not. And that's the reason why I try to write every day. And people. I have an account. I have several thousand people I send emails out to every day, and I have an account for every person who gets an email from me. And I can tell you that very few people make any contributions. I'm not interested in people sending go pay me or fund me or whatever they call it. I'm interested in people financing the access to information. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to write in such a way that people can learn. I'm trying to write in such a way that I'm not writing books because I have to write every day. If you write a book, you may be off the scene for 6 months. In 6 months, everything might be happening. We can't afford for some writer, prolific writer that is, some writer who's very knowledgeable and who's very analytical to be off for 6 months or more writing a book. I mean, we may be all gone during that time. And so that's what I'm doing now is spending all my time, and people who get my email know they get something from me virtually every day. And it's something to do and some conscious raising every day and things that you would never get anywhere else in the world. The things that come out of my mouth have never come out of anybody else's mouth. And most of what some of the speakers were talking about Saturday came out of my writings. I heard many things that were said on Saturday that I was the first to introduce to the black community. And so, and it's very important for us to do that, but you have to have the kind of software, you have to have the kind of resources, you have to have the kind of competence among your office staff that can do that kind of work. So that's where we are, and that's what, Farrakhan was certainly referring to Benjamin Crump. But on one hand, while he may have been slapping Crump on the left side, he was soothing him on the right side, and that's what's troubling.
I say. Right, well, I just wanted to ask it outright. And I pretty much understood what was going on. It was he's a master of the English language. Elijah Muhammad said, he said, one going to come up in the ranks of the nation, one going to come up in the ranks that's going to be a master of the English language, and he going to make the treachery of Malcolm look like child's play. Mm-hmm. And that's looking at how he felt about what was going on. And, we got the fiddler, the master of the English language. So we're going to move on. Let's see. Pennsylvania, line open. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment for Barbara Alton Maddox. All right.
Brother Vaughn, I'm just listening.
Oh, okay. All right, brother. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming in and saying something. Most people be quiet. Thank you, family. But Black Power, New York, your line open. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment for Barbara Alton Maddox. And family, if you could, if you just came in like the brother just say, I'm just listening, that'd be good. So then I can just move right on. But I'm going to keep going. And if not, I know our brother Minkarah had another question. Black Power Broker and Feetontheground Radio. Question or comment for Baba Alton Maddox? Brother Menkara.
Black Power.
Black Power. Family, go ahead. I know you had a couple more questions. If you could, go ahead and ask the brother a question. We're going through the lines, and a lot of callers are just listening. So, we might as well go ahead and engage Baba Maddox so they can get the most information that we can make sure is out there.
Oh, no doubt, no doubt. About Maddox, you spoke earlier on captivating our children's minds. Could you elaborate on that in regards to how important it is for us to make sure that our children have an African-centered perspective on this lifestyle in America, and how important it is for our enemy to engage in educating our children?
Yeah, that is extremely important. And one of the worst things that happened to us was Brown versus Board of Education, and basically, what Brown versus Board of Education is actually brought back training schools to the education system. For years, when you looked at one of our diplomas from high school, it said training school. That was on the diploma. So you didn't go to let's say Bronx high school. You went to Bronx training school, and so that distinguished the education that white people receive as opposed to the education that black people received in terms of going to those training schools. And in those training schools, it required training wheels. And so that basically meant that you won't always be dependent on somebody else. And this is one of my favorite quotes from Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He says, history shows that it does not matter who is in power. Those who have not learned to do for themselves and have to depend solely on others never obtain any more rights or privileges in the end than they had in the beginning. I need to read that again. History shows that it does not matter who is in power. Those who have not learned to do for themselves have to depend solely on others, never obtain any more rights or privileges in the end than they had in the beginning. And this is what basically Thurgood Marshall did, along with Dr. Kenneth Clark, because they presented false evidence to the U.S. Supreme Court about the school systems, and they suggested, based on a fraudulent doll test, that the black children who attended black schools love white folks more than white children, blacks and whites who attended those schools otherwise. And the point that was made was Dr. Clark, Dr. Kenneth Clark cited a test that he gave in Massachusetts as opposed to a test that he gave in Arkansas. And in the test that he gave in Massachusetts, which was an integrated setting, he claimed that the children in the integrated setting was not as fond of white children as opposed to those who went in the segregated setting. And so he had the Supreme Court to believe that if we integrate black children with white children, we will have a healthier mind than if we maintain segregated schools. And the scientific evidence did not suggest that. And John Davis, who was the appellate attorney for the South vehemently oppose the Supreme Court accepting this false voodoo scientific argument to support the integration of public schools. The reality of it is, and this is what Charles Hamilton Houston and others have said all along, is that when you have young black children being educated, they should be educated by their own, because he or she who rocks the cradle rules the nation. And so we have a situation now where white women are rocking the cradle, and therefore they're ruling the nation because of the integrated education system that we have in place now. And this is the first thing that we have to do in terms of getting our children straight, and that is to revolutionize the educational system and stop demanding an equal education, instead insisting on a different education.
That's right.
That's right. What would be some regarding curriculum? What would be some subjects you would emphasize on regarding building an African-centered child? The mentality of which will later be a strong African man.
That's a great question, and I start out with this. Malcolm X said, of all the disciplines, history is best qualified to reward our research. Now, what that means is that children who go to school and study mathematics should not only study the numbers and the equations, but they should also understand the history of mathematics. Where did math come from? When you study other courses, study the history and understand where they come from. Because once you understand the history of a course, then you understand that you are much closer to understanding that course than a white child, because it was your ancestors and not the white child's ancestors who started that course in the first place.
Thank you about that.
All right, family, we're going to go down and see. Let's see if North Georgia got a call. North Georgia, your line is open. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. You got a question?
Hi. Well, no, this is Karen. I'm just listening. I'm a student of Attorney Maddox.
Okay, well, thank you.
Hey, Karen, how you doing?
I'm good.
Good.
All right, thank you again, sister. Let's go ahead. Your line closed. Here we go. Louisiana, your line is open. Welcome to Feetontheground Radio. Question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Attorney Maddox. Dr. Clark had gave a lecture. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yes, brother, but state your name first, and then go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, sir. My name is Shelby Williams, and my mother purchased a lot of your videos from African United Movement, and I was wondering if you would give any consideration, because there were so many outstanding lectures there, if you would somehow make it so that we could purchase those. That's my first question. My second question is, Dr. Clark gave a lecture called Fake Leadership, where he explicitly mentioned Dr. Maulana Karenga and Minister Farrakhan. Can you speak to those two questions, Brother Alton? And you're always good, man. You're always very good. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you, man.
All right, thank you very much. Let me
yes, sir.
Let me say let me say that I have been much kinder to Mr. Farrakhan than Dr. Clark has been. You know, I start by saying that because in 1995, or prior to 1995, as a matter of fact, I had told Dr. Clark, whom I had represented, because I was his attorney during the time that he was alive, of course, And so when Minister Farrakhan proposed the Million Man March, I said that I was going to go. And he said, well, you just getting ready to waste your time because Farrakhan is a fake and a fraud. And so, I went against his wishes, his best wishes, and I attended the Million Man March because I really wanted to see firsthand what it was about. And, I can simply say that, it was important for us at the slave theater to have the slave theater. The sister that just came on the line a moment ago, had been a part of the slave theater. And it was a very important program. But we also, we didn't limit it to just people that we favored. We did bring on other people as well, and Mal Karanga was certainly one of those who we paid to come out and to listen to because we felt as though it is best when all of the cards are on the table and our people can learn to think for themselves. So we were highly opposed to censorship because we believe that censorship dumbed down a people. And so that was the basis for us bringing people in from all over the world to speak. And it was a very difficult task, and it required a lot of commitment from a lot of people. And as I said before, we had 4 very loyal sisters, Karen Mason being one, Leola Maddox being another, Sarah Russell being another, and Sister, she just escaped her name. I'm sure somebody else calls in. And they were all very helpful, and it took all of that in order to create it. I hope that we will be able to continue that. We have been continuing now for over 28 years, and the other sister's name was Dawn Martin, and those sisters had just done a tremendous job. And I work with all 4 of them. I'm somewhat of a workaholic, so I was really pretty much working 24 hours a day. But there's some tremendous wisdom that we got from the slave theater, and certainly we've been able to maintain that. And I think those are the kind of things that are helpful, and that's the reason why even today, we're getting ready to go right back to what we did. We had a wonderful audience out last Wednesday for Dr. Umar Johnson. We have Phyllis Yvonne Stigney, who will be there on Wednesday. And we have Dick Gregory, who's coming in the following week. And we have just a number of people that are coming in, and we're trying to revitalize all of that. But, yes, we would definitely make those things, possible and available to you. And the number that you can call is 718-834-9034, 718-834-9034. And give us a call tomorrow or any day during the week.
Yes, sir. Well, Bob, I don't know how long how long we heading up to the 8 o'clock hour. We got a lot of other callers. I want to go to like 2 or 3 more. Sister Camille, are you out there?
Black Power.
Black Power. Sister, if you had anything that you wanted to add on, anything that you heard, you want to ask a question,
hello,
something that sparked your mind. Please, come on in.
Hello, am I on mute?
Hold on. Who was that? How did that line get open? Hold on. This New York?
It's New York.
Oh, all right. Well, New York, come on in. If you want to ask a question or comment for Baba Alton Maddox, state your name first, and then come on in.
My name is Ronald Overton Bay, and I just like to say that I'm listening in on the Dr. Maddox, Alton Maddox. He's a great guy, and I appreciate him and I'm ready to work with him and do whatever needs to be done. Just acknowledge it.
Well, I certainly appreciate it, and this coming Wednesday night I'll be at the UAM headquarters at 1061 Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn, and certainly please come out And if you have any information or any questions, you can certainly call 917-947-8995 during the week, and we'll certainly be glad to have you on board.
All right. We want to go on down. Well, go ahead, Sister Camille. If you had any question you want to ask before I head down to, I'm coming to Pennsylvania.
I wanted to ask Baba Maddox. He had mentioned the Million March '95, and it it made me think of the fact that Dr. Khalid Muhammad wasn't allowed to speak, and I want to know what his feelings was on that, and in consideration that he attended. And then, secondly, he last time Baba was on the show, Baba Maddox was on the show, he had mentioned how the black woman had never been free from enslavement.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question, and I can answer that. I would certainly love to, and I will. As I started discussion tonight, I say that you have to always answer questions by certain principles. This is not a question of our emotions, our feelings, but things are handled according to those principles. And certainly, they are handled that way in terms of American jurisprudence. You have to be able to connect the dots. And many times you really have to be able to think outside the box as a reality. And I think the one thing we have to look at, and what we do know, is that the reason why the white man, and the reason why I just stood up and decided to give my whole career away for the defense of black women, is because I understood that the white man, ever since I've ever known him, and everything I ever known about him, he has always treated our women as chattel slaves from the beginning. And so I didn't have to read about those things. I saw them in reality. I grew up in Georgia. I can remember when I was about 10 years of age, and I was hanging out around this apartment complex, and there were some other people that was outside hanging around, and we saw this white man drive up about 9 o'clock in the evening, and that was always interesting because in a segregated society you didn't really see too many white people in your neighborhood after dark. And so I remember this man knocking on the door, and this black woman who was very attractive opened the door and let him in. And so, initially I didn't think a whole lot of it. But then at some point, her husband left the house and stayed away for about 4 hours. And so when this white man obviously got finished doing what he was doing, he left. And so I saw that, and then I saw a number of other things, and then even in recent times there was a congressman from Mississippi who became a head of agriculture department, and apparently he and his wife was at a dance and a party rather, and at some point a white man walked in and got her and took her away and stayed several hours and came back with her, and that was it. And so those kind of things just instill in me a real concern about our women, and the fact that obviously most black men were too incompetent to help defend them, incompetent to defend them, And so as a result of that, when the case of Tawana Brawley came down the pike, I just said, well, look, forget about whether I'm a lawyer or not. If we can't defend our women, then we ain't fit to live. And so, and I took these people to the mat and beat them at every turn. And this is why I'm a little bit concerned about Mr. Farrakhan, because Mr. Farrakhan has never stood up and told the truth about Tawana Brawley. He's done a lot of ranting and raving, but he never told the truth. He never told people that I won the case. He never told the proof that these are the documents. So while nobody else spoke up for me, he didn't speak up for me either. And and there came a time during the course of the trial up in Poughkeepsie, a defamation lawsuit, Pagonis versus Maddox, Mason, Shopton, and Brawley, even though Brawley wasn't personally served. And what had happened was Judge Hickman, who presided over the trial and was a hitman for the judicial system, called my office one day, and he wanted to know how could he get in contact with Minister Clemson Brown. And so, we told him what the number was, and so he got the number. And then the next day I went to court. Judge Hickman was allowing Pagonis and those to show a film clip of Minister Farrakhan at the Savior's Day in Chicago. And so, and in this film clip, Mr. Farrakhan, was ranting and raving about the rape of our women. And in it, he said, well, I'm going to strip all of the meat off of Pagonis and feed him to the fowl. And, and so, when he finished, Hickman told the jury, because you got to remember, when you have a trial, there's such a thing as a lead defendant. Now, the lead defendant is always the defendant in a multiple party case where there are several defendants. The lead defendant is considered the architect. He's the one that they really want. And so Hickman said to the jury, I want you to consider Farrakhan's statements as only pertaining to Maddox. I don't want you to consider them as relating to Sharpton or Mason. I want you to consider them as relating to Maddox. And now, at that particular time, I knew that I had to do some real lawyering. I mean, after they put that on and showed that to those white folks up there in Dutchess County, I knew I had to do some real lawyering. And I did. And, and I didn't back up from Minister Farrakhan or anything of that notion. I defended the case. Khalid Muhammad, Dr. Muhammad came up because he heard about it and he wanted to know what could he do. And I said, Khalid, don't worry. I got this. I know it's going to take several more thousands of dollars because, we had to pay for being up there. It's going to prolong the trial. And it ended up being the longest civil trial in the history of New York State. And, I knew that was going to come out of my pocket. And but I said, well, whatever it's going to be, but I'm not going to in any way disassociate myself from Minister Farrakhan. I'm not going to plead for any cop or leniency or anything like that. And I'm going to beat this case despite the fact that I know they have really poisoned this jury now. And so I told Khalid to go back. Don't worry about it. I had it. And I never heard from Mr. Farrakhan, however. And at the end of the case, and you see, this is what black people got to understand. How do you know when somebody won a case, a defamation case? A defamation case, the intent of which is to seal lips. Mason's lips are forever sealed on Pagonis. Sharpton's lips are forever sealed. They lost the case. Maddox lips are still unsealed. And I'm saying on your air right now, Steve Pagonis, you raped and kidnapped Tawana Brawley. Now, get a copy of this and go back into court. He can't because he lost. He lost because of the doctrine of res judicata and collateral estoppel. And so, this is why I tell people that we have to learn legalese and military science, because of that. But I never backed down from Minister Farrakhan. I never disowned him or belittled him or worried about me having to pay a large judgment because he had put himself into the equation. I never did any of that. That's the reason why it's hard for me to accept what Minister Farrakhan is saying now, and it's hard for me to believe that he is claiming justice or else. I can't believe that. And so, this is where we are. And so, it's very hurting. But these are the realities, and I end up spending maybe more than $100,000 more dollars because this became the longest civil trial in the history of New York. And one of the jurors, Althea Williams, a beautiful sister, said to me, she said, you really performed after they showed Minister Farrakhan's clip because she was one of the jurors. And she said, it was masterful how you just stretched this trial on for a long period of time after that. I had him up there for another 3 months because I knew that I had to redefend myself. As they heard what Minister Farrakhan said, I knew that there was no way in the world I could rest my case at that particular point because I would have been through. And so, that's why it's hard for me, now to have him to have Benjamin Crump as the attorney at war. When Crump ain't never warred on nobody. It never got any results on any case. And black folks are just as happy with him as all outdoors. And for somebody like me who's done nothing but defend black people and who never asked for a dime in terms of defending them, who have put myself in a situation where I can't collect a pension now because I spent all my money on black people. I don't have a Social Security. I'm not doing all of that because I did that for my people. I haven't seen Crump do anything but collect the next check for hush money. And so for us to be in a situation where we don't know the difference between Benjamin Crump and Alton Maddox is a real shame and a real indictment on all of our people as having insanity at all.
Black power. And black power to your service, Baba Maddox, for going in that courtroom swinging.
Thank
Baba
you.
No, thank you for sharing that. Because you're giving me, you're renewing my faith in the possibility. Because I have become disillusioned in the possibility of the legal system being a viable means of us getting retribution against this white racist society. Let me spit it plainly. And the only reason why I say that is because, and in my ignorance, please allow me to say that, just scratching the surface, time and time again, you see them ignoring their very own laws. You had the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment, only for there to have to be a Civil Rights Act of 1875. So I want to thank you for sharing that because it's helping to, like I said, renew that possibility in me. And Baba Maddox, can you briefly go into, because I read your recent article, Blacks' Right to Desegregate, to a Desegregated Public Trial. Can you go into what is going on briefly with that and how they are trying to railroad you?
Well,
and also a little bit about Elizabeth Jennings. And thank you for educating me with that article in relationship to this great sister, Black Power.
Thank you very much. Going back to 1976, and Judge Bruce Wright was on the bench then, and he was being called and ridiculed as Cut 'em Loose Bruce. And so it had gotten to the point where the PBA was on him every day for everything that he did, and he did everything right. There was no bell jumping, as the PBA claimed that would happen with the kind of ruling that he gave. And Bruce Wright understood that there was a correlation between the innocence of a defendant and his ability to be out on bail. And so he had a very intelligent approach to cutting people out on bail, because he realized that was their better possibility of actually winning an acquittal in the end. And so, that was him. Now, in the meantime, what people don't know is that the court system in New York in 1976 was segregated. And it was segregated in this manner. White court officers was taking the position that only white attorneys could sit on the front row. And this was I had just started practicing criminal law in '76, because I had been in popular law for the last 2 years beforehand. So, when I got over there and I saw this court officer, berating this black lawyer for sitting on the front seat, and told him to get in the back. And obviously that just bothered me, to no end, to see that. And so the next day, I just pitched a scene in the courtroom and threatened everybody in there, because that was the only way I could draw anybody's attention to me, because at that time nobody really did not know me. People did not know me. And I always say that I had just gotten off the boat, so people didn't know who I was. And so, anyway, but I knew I wasn't going to take this. I didn't come all the way to New York, to start sitting in the back seat of a courthouse. I mean, if I wanted to do that, I would have done it in Georgia, but I wasn't getting ready to do that here. And so, that was my situation, because you see, the Supreme Court in 1963 had issued a ruling desegregating courtroom. Now, up until '63, the courtroom was segregated by law. It could be segregated, even in New York, anywhere else. They wanted to segregate a courtroom. They could tell what black lawyer get out of the front seat, go into the back, and the Supreme Court said that was permissible. But a case came down the pike from Danville, Virginia, in which the defendant questioned and challenged the constitutionality of segregated courtrooms, and so obviously they had to rule that these courtrooms now could be integrated. But it was amazing to me that the court officers were abusing their discretion. You see, because just like in the streets, these rednecks come into the city, and they come here to brutalize people, and it don't make no difference whether you're lawyers or whether you are defendants. They believe in treating all as the same. And so, my point was, and this is where my trouble started in New York. It didn't start when I was a public lawyer, because when I was over in the civil courts, there was no such thing as the abuse that the court officers were imposing on people in criminal court. It just seemed to be a different kind of animal, and the treatment that black people were receiving in criminal court was just so far different that I took the position that I am an officer of the court and not a court officer. There's a difference between an officer of the court and a court officer. And my point to all the judges back there then was, as a officer of the court, I stand above a court officer. a court officer is only an employee, but I'm a part of the corporation. You know, the same way the stockholders are part of the corporation, and I will be treated as such. And so, you know, obviously, people had a hard time with that. And if you go and look at the disciplinary complaints against me, the court officer started on me just like the police officer started on Bruce Wright. You know, and so when you deal with these rednecks, their point was, you know, hey, we're not going to have any changes in the status quo, and it's going to be just like we've always treated Negroes. And I just said, no, that's just not the way it's going to be. And so that was my position there. And I took that as not only being relying on Rosa Parks, but it's interesting that a lot of blacks don't realize when they ride the subway every day in New York, and when they ride a bus line every day in New York and sit where they want to sit, that it started because of a black woman, a school teacher by the name of Elizabeth Jennings. And Elizabeth Jennings refused to give up her seat in the 1840s. Not 1940s, the 1840s, to a white man. And so in refusing to give her seat, she was kicked off of the bus line. Now, unlike Rosa Parks, she wasn't arrested, but she was kicked off the bus line. And so she said, well, I'm going to sue not only for myself, but for all of my people. And so she initiated a class action. And the New York legislature passed legislation in 1844 that integrated public transportation in New York. And so every time a black person, get on a train or a bus in New York, they should always tip their hat to Elizabeth Jennings for taking that action, as she did. And she was not the only black woman. There was a black woman by the name of Sarah Remond, Remond, up in Boston, Massachusetts. And she was kicked out of a theater because of segregated policies. And she also initiated a class action. And as a result of that class action, she was able to get all blacks in Boston who attended the theater to sit wherever they please. And so, you know, wherever you go up there in Boston, you should always thank Sarah Remond for taking the stance that she took on behalf of all of our people. And these people were not dealing in hush money. You know, it wasn't like somebody like Benjamin Crump who's dealing in hush money and personal injury actions and having no effect on nobody else. I mean, so the money that he got out of Trayvon Martin and the money that he got out of Michael Brown in Ferguson have had no impact on nobody else. He didn't sit down and say, we're not going to take this money until we get a settlement which says that the police department in Ferguson has to be put in receivership. I mean, that's what you call real lawyering. You know, when you say you're going to have to be put under somebody else's control, and we want these other things reflected in this settlement agreement. He didn't do any of that, and he won't do any of that, and he did not demand a special prosecutor. He didn't demand a special prosecutor. That was not a special prosecutor down in Florida. If had there been a special prosecutor, George Zimmerman may well been behind bars now. But Crump was afraid to ask for a special prosecutor. And so he cannot call himself the attorney at war. There's only been one lawyer in America in 2 cases, not one, who've gotten special prosecutors, and that was Alton Maddox. And that's the reason why I'm called the attorney at war. I earned the stripes. You know, I wasn't selling wolf tickets at a press conference. I was beating people up in the courtrooms. And as a result of that, that's where I got the title from. And it should not now be cavalierly used by somebody like Minister Farrakhan and Benjamin Crump.
Black power. Black power. Black power.
Yeah. That. A lot of frauds.
A lot of frauds out here. A lot of frauds. You know, we were Baba, how much time do you got? It done got to 8:20.
Well, you know,
went over. I know some TV told me I had you to 8 o'clock at least.
Well,
I know we don't went over.
Well, you know, if I can sort of tiptoe out here as quickly as possible, it might be good because, you know, I have to go back to work. You know, there's always things to do. And, you know, I do want to thank people because I was caught up in a real jam up in Del Mar, New York. And that's one of the reasons why I had to cancel the trip to Atlanta, because there were other reasons as well. But the judge up there was not playing fair, and he was hitting below the belt. And I did not want to lose the case because I'm on restrictions in New York now for right to travel. I can't travel. So, you know, and I wanted to take this case to trial to win it so that my restrictions can be lifted, you know. So because it is not easy, you know, not being able to leave the borders of New York to go anywhere. I can't go up to Connecticut. I can't go down to New Jersey. You know, I can't go anywhere. So, you know, this is the fugitive slave law.
Y'all hear this?
Right, this is the fugitive slave law, 1850, that we are still being subjected to. And so, you know, that's really why I have to work real hard, because I don't have the kind of people around me, you know, who are very supportive. You know, I do want to thank Brother Reginald Peavy, you know, who's been there, and you know him, doing a great job. But a lot of people just don't take this stuff seriously. And when they do, they start working for the other side. They start praising the enemy. And so, you know, it's rough out here. But I couldn't go to Atlanta because I don't have the right to travel. And I can't get black people to stand up as a class and try to stop not Mario, but Andrew Cuomo from doing what he's doing. You know, I can't get people to say a word. This man should not even be in office there, but he is. And we don't have anybody, you know, who can stand up and say, look, man, you're dead wrong what you're doing. Now, I do want to announce that on December 1st of this year, I will be returning to the courtroom. And the reality of it is that I know that I don't have any other support, so I have no other choice. You know, I don't have anybody go speak for me or speak for anything that I stand for, or even give me any money to help me to fight these things. You know, and as I've said before, I've earned it. I thought I was putting money into an annuity, and that I would be able to get some money back, because black people can't pay me for everything, but I'll be able to get some money back to get used to wage these battles. But now I'm around people who don't want to give up a dime. So, you know, it's not easy, but it's a struggle, and I'm not in any way dismayed, because it's the way I'm made up. And if I had to do it all over again, I would do it the exact same way that I have done it, because I believe that that's the only way that we can make real contributions to our struggle. And I'm certainly not any better than anybody else. And as I said before, Elizabeth Jennings did it, Sarah Reedman did it, Fannie Lou Hamer did it, Rosa Parks did it. And so, you know, the struggle has to continue. And we have to continue to maintain the legacies that they gave and make sure those legacies are not buried. But it is because we allow those legacies to be buried that people are subject to slave barriers. You see, if we allow for Dr. Ben dead, and we allow for Dr. Clark dead to go down in a grave along with their bodies, then that's a slave barrier. And that's what people have to understand, that too many times people like Gil Noble and Lambe Breath gave so much. And in the end, for everybody to sit there and praise them and then turn right around and call the program Here and Now rather than Like It Is, and to change the format from public affairs to arts and entertainment is a real indictment on us as a people. And it does not portend well for our children, because that's what this whole struggle is about. It is about our children. And this is an Indian proverb that I think everybody should read and understand. Treat the earth well. It was not given to you by your parents. It was loaned to you by your children. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. And that's what my struggle has been about. We have borrowed this from our children, and we should treat the earth well. We should treat everything about it well, and in the end, we should return it to them because it is theirs. And for people like Minister Farrakhan and others to do what they are doing is a question of child abuse and the elders abusing the children.
By power.
By power. And with that being said, family, we're not going to, we definitely thank Barbara Maddox for coming in today, sharing his time with us. We definitely respect every moment. Y'all make sure that you got family out there, tell them to get into the archives. Please tune into this. Listen in intently because there's nothing but jewels being dropped. And we thank everybody who came out tonight. I want y'all to come on out again. Come on out again next Tuesday. This Tuesday will be coming up, be news, and more news. Again, I like to say we thank all of y'all for coming out this Sunday for our Sunday special and our new philosophies and opinions about Alton Maddox. Tonight we dealt with a little bit of message to the grassroots and just looking at agendas moving forward. Y'all was able to get y'all questions in. Y'all got them answered. Excuse me for all the people that I couldn't get to the lines to get all of you, but thank you all for coming out. I'd like to close out the same way that we come in, and that's with a praise Nat Turner, glory to Garvey, long live the spirit of Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad, praise Harriet Tubman, glory to Ida B. Wells, long live the spirit of Sister Fannie Lou Hamer, Bibi Faudier.